Hello, viewers and listeners, and however else you're watching. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Magic Morning Wood. And as always, I'm Ron, and with me is.
Hello. Also, it's Clive, and I'm shouting it out to people taking it in via their nose. The sniffers that we have.
Sniffers. The Civ. Isn't your name Sive, probably?
Yeah, no, I fucked up there.
He fucked up writing his own name, folks. Okay,
Yes,
so.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, normally when you log in, it has like it doesn't even ask me.
Uh,
It just goes as default.
uh,
And this time it asked me for some
you have
reason.
to change your settings, I think, right? So it's in your settings,
That's
or you
fine.
can just go to the top of the screen right now and then change it right now. But
Yeah,
that's okay. We get
yeah, that's fine.
live. Okay, with a magic key. Okay, so anyway, how's it going, Clive? Most important part of the show.
Yes, it is going well. And how about you, Ron? How is it going
Not
with
too
you?
bad. I'm a little sick today, so if I sneeze and sniffle a little bit, my apologies.
Right.
But I nothing can hold me back from talking about movies with you. Right.
Oh, isn't that sweet? And also, nice to check in with you around this time of year as well, because you do your Oscar watch thing.
Right. Yes.
So, has anything jumped out at you as your favorite going forward, or something that you think is like everyone should watch, or notable, or something you're shockingly terrible and you can't believe it's in the running, or anything at all that jumped out at you?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. I have to remember the list. The problem is that they all start to run together after a while. But yes, the I have seen many of them so far. Of course, the big ones. The Where are the best pictures? I'm trying to find them, but um, uh, sorry, just a second.
No, no, it's my
Uh,
fault. I really did put you on the spot. I thought you would have an answer, like something that
oh, here it is.
to go.
Yeah, I saw. I've seen 7 out of 10 of the best pictures, and most of them were, I mean, were decent and would be worthy winners.
There's
Of
no
course,
there's no like driving Miss Daisies.
was Driving Miss Daisy like a standout that year or something? I
Well, I
can't
think
remember that.
driving Miss Daisy is the famous example people refer to as like, how the fuck was that best picture
Oh yeah, yeah.
nominee and winner, and
Well, I think there's a lot of Oscar baity movies,
yeah,
of
yeah.
course, right? Like which I mean, the one that I watched and I did not really enjoy was Maestro, which I thought was quite overhyped and not that interesting of a movie. I thought the performances were good and well deserved acting performances, acting awards, but acting nominations. But yeah, the movie itself is kind of a mess, actually. I thought so,
Okay.
and really dull, very dull. Because I think uh, maybe Leonard Bernstein's life was not actually all that interesting, to be completely honest. It was a lot of drama there, but yeah, I really enjoyed Anatomy of a Fall. I thought it was good performances and really interesting story. I enjoyed Barbie. Did you see Barbie, Clive?
No, no.
No.
Was that actually nominated for anything in there? Because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was,
a lot of stuff.
because
Best Picture, and then
she didn't get
and
nominated.
then
Right?
of course Ken. Yeah, yeah, Ryan Gosling, and also Best Supporting for America Ferrera. But yeah, so
Right.
but
But
yeah, yeah.
Greta Gerwig didn't get a Best Director
Greta
nomination.
Gerwig and Margot Robbie didn't get one either. So which is kind of like a big kind of they said like the Oscar is the movie is kind of about the patriarchy and the and how men get more chances of that, and then it's sort of
Let,
life imitating art where
let that be
Ken
a
gets another.
lesson to you, girls.
Yes.
We shall have our revenge.
Yes. Stop trying to make points by that, and
Yeah.
and men will always win. So that's a joke.
What's so hard?
As it,
What's so hard to remember about that?
yeah, yeah. I enjoyed Barbie though. I think it was a lot. I think it was really really overhyped. So I think it's kind of
Yeah.
hard to take it. But I think it on its own merits, it was a very well done movie. I thought it was quite done, yeah, well done. So
Mhm.
it was as well done as a Barbie movie could be, right? So I thought it was I mean, so I think it's yeah. I mean, it's better than it should be. It deserves to be when it's about Barbie, right? So
Right.
also I really enjoyed Past Lives. That was really that was a really good one. That one kind of is a standout for me. I'd say Past Lives. Oppenheimer was like really beautiful to watch. A little bit overblown, but overblown. See what I did there? But yeah, yeah. Killers of the Flower Moon was also really great. Holdover is really great. So all those are worthy. But so waiting to see American Fiction and Poor Things in the Zone of Interest. I'll let you know about those. So yeah.
Okay, that's probably
Have you
enough.
seen anything nominated this year?
I don't think so.
No.
The first one I'll probably get out to see is Poor Things is opening this weekend.
Right.
I'm going to go see that because I just well, I've almost finished the book, which I'm enjoying.
Okay.
So I think that's the first one I'll probably see, and then, well, as you know, I don't follow this shit. I'll see if it's a film I want to see anyway, but I'm not seeing it because it's nominated. What I'll probably see is Zone of Interest again. Waiting to read the book first. Anatomy of a Fall I want to see, and I think that's about it. Unless there might be some stuff in the foreign. Is El Conde, has that been nominated in a foreign?
El Conde was only nominated for cinematography, I believe.
Okay, well, I'll see El Conde because I like that director. We spoke of him on here before when we talked about No, and I like the idea of a vampire Pinochet. So,
right.
Incidentally, you started watching that. Do they call him Pinochet?
Yeah, Pinochet. Yeah, Pinochet. I think they call it. Yeah, so
they say because this is the thing. Because I think, from what I understand, is everyone goes Pinochet because but someone told me that actually it's counterintuitive and it's actually pronounced Pinochet. So what are they saying in the show? Did they say Pinochet or Pinochet?
A lot of it is in Spanish, so I haven't really.
No, you would hear it.
Or not Spanish. Sorry, Portuguese. Spanish.
No, it's Spanish.
It's Spanish. Yeah. So it's Spanish. So I hear it, but I haven't really picked up on the pronunciation really, to be honest, because I figured it's got to be a Spanish pronunciation anyway. So I don't know how you pronounce it in English, right? So.
Oh, that's interesting. I always assume with names you pronounce it the
same way.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, we live in Nihon, right?
Yeah, I guess, but that's a totally different name, though, isn't it? That's not a different pronunciation. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that I've always like English has its own pronunciation, right? So I mean that's the idea. So that's what makes English so fun, is because it always does it its own way, right? So that's why I actually teach that to students, which is that, like, even words that are not in English, we say them in English ways. Like karaoke or sushi, right? So.
But sushi is sushi.
It is sushi, right? Instead of sushi.
The one
we add like stresses and stuff that aren't there, right? So.
The one I don't understand why people always get wrong is people say sake. Why do people say sake? It's never
sake. Yeah, sake. Well, because I can tell you the reason. Actually, I teach this is because we don't have at the end of English words. So anything karaoke and sake and what was the other example is karaoke and sake and forgot the other one. There was karate, right? So that's why it's pronounced karate, right? Because we don't have at the ends of our words, and so we change it to an e sound, which fits the English mouth, right? So yeah, so that's why.
Okay, that makes sense. I always wondered why it ended up people said sake.
Yeah, and so they don't know how to say sake, so that's why they say sake, right? Sake, right? Because they changed it to an e sound. But anyway.
This is an educational episode.
There. Right. So moving on to what we're talking about today. Yes. So we are reacting to what we reacted was The Brood. So with your favorite director, right? Yeah. Would you say he's your favorite director?
No.
You went on and on about him last time, though, right?
Yeah, but I can go on and on about a lot of things. No, I don't. No, in all honesty, if someone said list your favorite 5 directors and thing, he probably actually wouldn't be on the list. I don't know why. It's just not one that would. I don't know. I'd have to sit down and think about it, but I doubt it. I don't think he'd be in my absolute tip-top, absolute favorite. Although he is consistently brilliant. So
Okay, right. Okay, well, anyway, maybe we do a show about that, your top 5 favorite directors someday, but but anyway, so yeah, so David Cronenberg, written and directed by David Cronenberg, 1983's Videodrome.
1982 is Videodrome, yes.
1983, yeah, 1983.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
1983 came out in 1983.
Ooh,
So three,
there's an
February 4th,
owl outside. Yeah,
February 4th, 1983.
yeah. Did he make it in
Right?
2 months? No,
But yeah,
1982.
so no, I did want to talk about this. I was listening to a podcast recently about I had a bunch of actors they were
Hmm,
talking about production schedules and stuff like that. And
yeah,
sometimes, I mean, depending on the movie, it can take sometimes 10 to 15 years to make a movie. Right. And sometimes people film it over a number of years or a number of months. So just because it's released in 83 doesn't mean it was made in 82. It could have been made in 81 and shelved, or it could have been made in 79 and then had a little bit by little. So it
yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's always the year before, though,
No, no.
right?
But if you look up the production dates for Videodrome, it was made in 1982.
But it was released in 83, right?
Just about. Yeah, yeah.
But it's still
But it
released.
was
So wouldn't the
90.
release date technically should be the date
Let's
that
put it
it's
this way. Until we watched this for this, I'd never heard of Videodrome referred to as a 1983 production before until I went to
at the end, I actually looked at the end of the credits, it actually has copyright 1983.
yeah, copyright it was released in, but it's a 19.
So it's 83.
Nah.
Anyway, early 80s movie, Videodrome
For
by
example, 1982.
or 83, right? So yeah, so all right. So Videodrome, yeah, so starring James Woods and Debbie Harry,
Mm.
Sonia Smits, and a bunch of other 80s low budget horror kind of people. Yes, so I assume this is not first watch for you,
Oh,
Vaj?
no. I
How
don't
many
know
times
if
have you seen the movie?
James Woods and Debbie Harry count as early 80s horror people, but
No, I said and other 80s.
oh, sorry. Oh, okay. Um, who?
I don't know.
Okay.
Peter Dvorsky. I don't know. Has he ever been in? I don't know.
I
I don't
don't know.
know.
He's good. I like him.
I was taking a guess. So okay,
Right. Okay.
I guess I was wrong.
Okay.
So because usually I've never heard of these people, but you're like, oh, I had that person from that movie. He had one line and blah blah blah, blah, and I was like, okay,
No,
sure.
actually, no one jumps out
Okay.
as people I know from other films. Actually, although I always assume that maybe they might be more well known in Canada,
Oh,
but not the
possible.
case in this.
Well, he's not. Yeah, I mean,
I meant to
not that
ask
I
you
know.
this. I meant to ask you this actually last time when we were doing the Brood, actually, because I was kind of curious. So obviously, Art Hindle is relatively well known, right? Because he's starred in enough films and people know who he is. But I was curious: does Art Hindle have a higher profile in Canada because he's a homeboy done good, or is he not that well
Not
known?
really.
Ah,
Not
okay.
really. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know how much down this road you want to go, but uh, Canadians don't really revere a lot of their Canadians anyway. So they don't really care that much stuff. So I just totally neither here nor there. But I heard this funny adage, or not an adage, but a funny kind of story about Canadians the other day, which was that um, it's a joke about Canadians idea, which is so there's a Canadian lobster fisherman and an American lobster fisherman,
Mhm.
and they go to catch some lobsters, and they get a bucket of lobsters, and the American puts his lid on his bucket so the lobsters don't get out, and then the Canadian doesn't put a lid on it, and the American fisherman goes, "Why aren't you going to put a lid on your lobster? They're going to get out." He goes, "Oh well, no. You see, in Canada, they're if one of the lobsters try to get out, then the other ones will just pull them down. You know."
Ah,
Right,
right. Okay.
right, yeah.
That is a very
So,
Canadian indeed
yeah,
joke.
it's a Canadian idea. So it's like, yeah, it's okay. It's more like we don't like to let people get too big for their riches. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
sort of like,
Also not famous for its sense of humor either.
right. Yes, I guess. I don't know if it was a Canadian joke, but anyway. Yeah, I don't really know Art Hindle that well from much other stuff. So, but I'm sure maybe in certain circles he does. But
Right, right.
anyway, so in this case, David Cronenberg went outside Canada to get two Americans, James Wood and Debbie Harry. I guess, and even going outside of acting circles to get, of course, the lead singer of Blondie.
Hmm.
So kind of almost a reaction also to yours last week, which is The Runaways. Movies starring or about sort of rock stars, I guess, or musicians, right? Lead
Yeah,
singers of
I'll buy that
sure.
for $1.
For $1, man, for $1. Right. So yeah, how do you explain
Well, yes.
the synopsis of this movie? Yeah, it was my first time to see this movie, so I had never seen this movie before. So it was on my list of ones that I needed to get around to watching. As I mentioned last time, I think I'm not as familiar with Cronenberg as I should be.
Hmm.
And as you say, they're always really, well respected, and they're pretty, you can kind of rely that it'll be a pretty decent thing most of the
Yeah.
time.
There's not many
So
clinkers in the
Blinkers,
Cronenberg
yeah. So I need to just kind of go back and start watching them all, kind of thing. So, yeah. So this one is, well, it starts off with James Woods is he's kind of like a public access kind of he runs a public access television station that specializes in sort of like exploitation or sex and violence kind of
Civic TV, right? Apparently, it was based on.
based on City TV.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I was going to ask you, is that something you're
yeah.
familiar with? Do you know of City TV?
Yeah, City TV was stationed in Toronto, and it was sort of just a regular station, but it was kind of famous for that. You would always get all like kind of the soft core and like the like that would have all those kind of movies, that kind of after hours. So that
Okay.
was sort of my introduction to those types of movies was from City TV. Yeah, so yeah,
A young Ron would tune into City TV late
yeah, yeah.
nights.
Channel 7, right? Channel 7 was City TV.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I think so. City TV also had lots of other stuff. They used to do like stuff like based on Much Music, which was our MTV and stuff that they had.
Okay. But
Yeah, so
was it a public access channel or?
not really. No, it wasn't a public. It was like a full like a. I don't think so. I don't really know much about it, but I don't think so. It was like a full on like just a regular station, as far as you know.
So
But it was
in terms
they
of the
tended to play more. Excuse me. The more excuse me, kind of like R-rated or kind of more adult kind of
so
content
so in
after
terms
hours.
of so you're talking, I'm guessing you're coming of age, you're talking late 80s, early 90s. So are we talking like Shannon Tweed films and stuff like that?
Sure, stuff like that. Yeah, like
Okay.
Poison Ivies and like all those, but also just like stuff that you wouldn't like. There are sort of our video nasties, I guess, right? Because they were like, we didn't have video nasty, and
You
we
were
only had
allowed to
really
see them though. That's the difference, right?
yeah, I guess. But at the same time, we didn't really have access to those types of movies. We just had what was ever at Blockbuster, and Blockbuster kind of course, only had whatever was new and didn't really have a lot of those movies. So I didn't have access to any of those types of movies at all. City TV was the one place that you could get those things sometimes.
It's funny. I often wonder about this actually because I remember Blockbuster. It's funny now. At two different tangents. It's funny. I remember nowadays you hear people like, a kind of lamenting that there's no Blockbusters anymore.
Oh, really? No.
It's weird. I remember when Blockbusters came along, like it was like a pox on the mom and pop video industry. Like everyone,
they really did.
Fucking Blockbusters, right? But now it's the golden age. Oh, if only there were Blockbusters, right? Because there's no video shops. But the other thing as well, I'm wondering if Blockbusters might have worked slightly different in North America, because the one thing I remember people complaining about as well was, yeah, like you said, Blockbuster being somewhat policed as being kind of family friendly, right? So there were certain type of titles you might not be able to get at Blockbuster.
Right. Yeah.
In the UK, I remember Blockbusters. I'd had that image, but then you'd go into Blockbusters and you would actually find all the gore and sexy films and stuff that the other stores had as well. So I'm wondering if UK Blockbuster just had a different policy.
Possible. But I mean, that like, of course, Blockbuster never had like a X-rated room, right? That a lot of them had like the back room with like the curtain to go get like the porn, whatever, the porn room. But Blockbuster didn't even have that stuff. Like it was not even available, right?
So in the UK, we wouldn't have had those corners anyway. So because it was illegal at the time. So But
Yeah. So, but yeah, we don't have any. Blockbuster would tended to be, and also they tend to be more about new releases, and then they would always
right,
cull their old releases. So it was kind of a whatever was selling or renting most, they would keep, and so this stuff like this would never really stick around that much, right? So it
right.
was harder to get. I mean, then they had some mom and pops, but they went the way of the dodo as soon as blockbusters moved in and stuff like that. So it was, yeah. So City TV was a place that I could watch movies like this sometimes, right? So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so but not to this degree. Of course, this is kind of like
No.
take it to like a much farther degree, of course, right? So this type of stuff that he wants to play or is playing on this channel would never play on City TV, I don't think.
They
Right? So
were showing Samurai Dreams.
yeah, yeah, maybe Samurai Dreams might have run, but certainly not Videodrome itself would have
Right.
probably wouldn't have run.
Right.
I think so. Um, so anyway, he his sort of tech guy, I guess, accidentally finds this kind of stream of basically looks like a snuff films and like torture so that and yeah, it looks quite obvious that this is really happening, that these are actual snuff films, but he doesn't believe that they're real. He thinks that, oh, their actors are great and the production value is really really good, and so he really really wants copies of this so he can play it on his channel. He thinks this is the future, so they try to track the signal and stuff and find it through bouncing through Malaysia and all stuff, and finally tracks it down to Pittsburgh, right? So in the States, and so this it's set in Toronto, of course. I want to say that, and so they follow it up, and he has this sort of fling with Debbie Harry, who's this sort of S&M kind of starlet, I guess, kind of.
Well, no, she's a
Yeah.
radio TV show host. She hosts.
But I think she's a like she I think she focuses on S&M kind of stuff. I don't think she's. That's why they're both on that talk show. I think is that's the
Oh,
kind
really?
of person. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so
Oh, okay. I didn't get that.
was that kind of
She was a host of
TV.
that show, Emotional Rescue, and then obviously in her private time, yeah, she's into that. I would
But
say.
yeah, I thought watching it was more into private time. But when I looked up like the synopsis, like on Wikipedia stuff, it says that she actually was like ran those types of programs, and which made more sense is why she was on that talk show, because they're both on this.
That might be in the
Yes, on
original.
this talk show about sex and violence on TV, right?
Right.
So
That might be in the
yeah,
original script, maybe, but I'm not sure if
yeah,
it
maybe
into the
right.
film. Yeah.
Anyway, so he's hitting on her on air, and then
Mm.
they start having this sort of affair together, and well, not affair, they're not married, but like this sort of like relationship, where they get into kind of like kinky S&M kind of stuff,
At her
and
behest as well, right? He's like
yes,
quite straight, but
right, yeah,
she's kind of into pain.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so she decides that she wants to be on Videodrome, so she goes down to Pittsburgh to figure out, and then never comes back, and so he kind of goes off on this kind of like quest to figure out where it is and try to find it, and he tracks it down to this some sort of like a mission
Cathode
where
ray mission.
what's that?
The cathode ray mission.
Yeah, cathode ray mission, and then finds out that the guy who was the on the show that he was with Debbie Harry, which was there was another guy who kind of sent in, like, was talking by remote satellite or whatever, like was on TV.
Right.
But it turns out that that guy was the one who runs Videodrome, or was one of the ones that started it, and he's actually already dead, and
Brian
everything was
Oblivion, right?
yeah pre-recorded, and now it's being run by his daughter who's running the mission, kind of thing, right? So
Yeah. He's
he
called
sort of has this.
this is Jack Crilley as Brian Oblivion, who's called a dear prophet, who's only ever seen
Yeah,
on TV screens, right?
right, yeah, so the
And
Oblivion.
his saying is television is reality, and
Yes,
reality is less than television, right? That's the
right, yeah.
quote.
So stuff like that, which is talking about like a lot of like meta stuff about television and how the future of television and media and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it turns out that Videodrome is not just these snuff films, but it's some sort of like a, I don't know, it's like a I don't know what it actually is, to be honest, but it's like it gives you, it's some sort of like gives you a tumor and then makes you hallucinate, and
Yeah.
then it just gets really really weird where James Woods has these like really visceral hallucinate, like a lot of I guess this is considered body horror, so a lot of like Sort of like he's got like the slit in his stomach, which is I think supposed to be kind of indicative of vaginas as well. And he
Yeah.
puts
Turns
his
into a
gun in there and it loses it, and he comes out of the hallucination and his gun's gone, and it turns out he's inside, and
he can
later
put
it kind of
VHS
fuses to his
tapes
hand.
as well, right? Into his stomach. He can put like fleshy VHS tapes in.
Puts a VHS tape and stuff like that, and the VHS tapes are pulsing, and then the TV is also like kind of pulsing like that, and then like his gun kind of fuses to his hand. It has this kind of like this almost like a slimy alien kind of thing where it's like kind of stuck with that. But then of course you're thinking that it's a hallucination as well. He's hallucinating it, but then is it a hallucination, and all this kind of like what's real,
Right.
what is it?
Right.
And
As
then
well,
and then
spoilers, we should say as well. It also turns out that it might be some kind of right-wing conspiracy as well, right?
right,
Kind of perverse elements of society.
right.
Yeah.
And then and so then it kind of and it turns out that Debbie Harry is on the screen, but then she's already dead, and she's talking to him, blah blah blah. And then and then it sort of he ends up trying to kill a bunch of the guys that are behind it. Turns out that his tech guy who found it by accident was actually part behind it, and then was specifically giving it to him on purpose to get him to be like their next leader or something, or they wanted him to kind of
Well, they want him to put
put it on
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 display.
so that they spread it out to more people. So right, so but he ends up like kind of killing that guy and killing the other guy who's in charge of it, who's runs like a glasses shop, but is actually an arms dealer of
You
some
mean
kind of
Barry Convex?
yes, Barry
That's a
Convex.
great name.
Yeah. And then and then it kind of finishes with him going to like a shipyard, and there's a TV there as well for some reason, and it basically tells him to uh kill them all or kill himself or something like that, and then he ends up shooting himself, right? Or he sees himself shooting himself on the screen, and then he does it for real, and
Long live the new Flash.
the new Flash, yeah. So so that's it. So I guess it's hard to explain that movie. I think a little bit. It's quite surreal and a lot of like hallucinatory kind of like not really entirely clear elements, but yeah. So
And
Clive, what's
as well a very, very real Rick Baker, Steve Johnson FX, right? It's
right? Yeah,
not CGI.
effects are awesome in this movie. Yeah, so like really like yeah. So
well, they're there as well. You can see actors like reacting to it in front of
right.
it always makes a huge difference, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Again, for my first watch, and it was, of course, even though it was really weird, it was very engrossing, this movie, right? It's like, I mean, you can't look away from it. The special effects are like bar none. They're so good in this movie, right? So I mean, they spared no like I don't think they had that much of a budget, but they spent most of it on these effects, which all look great. Like really looks good. Yeah.
Importantly as well, really, this is the other thing David Cronenberg does as well, is even with these earlier, grungier kind of horror films, really well acted as well. I mean, you get
really well acted. Yeah. So
it seems a shame actually in recent. I don't know the details. I don't really follow these things, but from what I understand, hasn't James Woods become a bit of a pariah of late for certain?
I don't know if he's a pariah. I think he's gone full like nut job. I think it's right.
Oh, okay.
He's apparently like full like right wing conspiracist, like Trump loving kind of like like NRA nut job. I think is.
Okay. Because I wasn't quite sure to what extent it was he actually had, or it was just rumors, or if he was because you can see people. I mean, James Woods has always been spiky, right? So you can see him.
Yeah.
People not quite getting him,
right.
Maybe, but I don't know. Like I said, but it's such a shame because fuck is he good? I mean, watching this again, it just reminded me he's such a
so interestingly, like it's funny how this, I don't know, the universe comes together, if you believe in that kind of stuff, but every time we watch a movie and I'm doing something else, something will always connect to the movie that we're about to watch. So like I was listening to a podcast just this week, totally unrelated to this movie or anything like that, and it was the guest on it was Natasha Lyonne. Do you know Natasha Lyonne?
Yeah.
So and she, for some reason, started talking about James Woods, and how he was like a full up, straight up nut job, but was a great actor, which is
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about. And then the guests and the hosts were talking about and commenting on how she's amazing that she's able to separate the life from art and stuff like that. Apparently, she worked with James Woods and apparently like just a real fucking asshole. But that apparently he's a great actor. So yeah. So and here's a great example. He's a really good actor, but yeah, probably straight up
He's one of those
wouldn't like him in person.
he's so present.
Yeah.
Like, you never, even though he's always James Woods, he's also always just he's one of the best reactors, I think. I mean, of his generation, he's hands down one of the best actors. Like, very few people couldn't. I don't know. He just feels so real somehow to me.
Right. Yeah, he definitely doesn't ever like feel like he's acting, right? Especially with these like low budget 80s movies. Oftentimes you get these really kind of wooden, line readings and stuff like that. But yeah, he definitely knows his craft and he knows how to make it feel real, right? So especially with this sort of like real out there kind of content, he's able to kind of like let you like
plays burning the candle at both ends particularly well.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
In things like Salvador and stuff like that. Like, definitely his speciality, but certainly he can play a lot of things. He obviously he was handed a lot of that stuff because he does do it particularly well. But I think just in general, just a fabulous screen presence.
Right.
Yeah. So the film definitely benefits hugely from having him as
him. Yeah.
I think.
Sure. And I think he lends himself to that character too, right? Because I get the impression that he's not that far from that actual character. Right?
Yeah.
I think he's probably kind of quite like that actually in real life.
As it turns out. Yeah.
Yeah, but not even just like the kind of a nut job, but also like the kind of skeezy. I've heard he's got lots of like kind of like Me Too's and some of that too, right? So I think he's kind of like inappropriate with women, that kind of stuff too, which is kind of on here too, I guess, right, to some degree. But yeah.
Right. No,
but anyway. So what do you make of this movie in terms of Cronenberg's kind of filmography and what?
Well, it's interesting. It was interesting. This is one of the ones rewatching. I hadn't seen it for a long time, but prior to that long gap, I knew this film inside out, seen it loads of times. I remember at one point even sampling it for like a music track that I made, as I believe probably lots of people sampled the television Reality and Reality is Less Than Television. And also I think it's a lot of people seem to think of it as, I've heard it referred to as Cronenberg's first masterpiece, right? It's like his first really full-on Cronenberg film, right? It's no more Cronenbergian can you get, right?
Right, sure.
I don't know if I think Shivers is maybe his first masterpiece. I think he nailed it out the gate. I love Shivers. But yes, all that stuff's true, and it's I think it's still essential viewing, especially for fans of kind of horror and exploitation. But watching it this time, it struck me that of all of his films, this might actually be the one that ultimately dates less well, because there's something, the big boogeyman is VHS technology.
Right.
And there's
actually Betamax, not VHS.
Right.
Betamax, so technically.
There's something really quaint about that in the post kind of broadband social media era.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, the ideas are still. I mean, you could kind of do a maybe update of.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is that we talked about The Brood getting an update, and I think that it would be really interesting to see an update of The Brood, because based on today's modern sensibilities, I think this one needs an update too, right? Is that because you have to kind of take these movies in terms of when they were made and the but the very little or yeah, it's a stretch to say there's any connection or relevance even today, right, with what's going on, right? So, but this movie could easily be updated to social media and stuff like that. So I think it
Right.
would be, yeah. So I think it would be interesting to see an updated a 21st century version of Videodrome.
And filmmaking, I think popular filmmaking has finally caught up with David Cronenberg as well. That's the other thing. Like we were talking about how The Brood, some of it seemed a bit on the nose now, but it wasn't in 1979, right? And I think that the same with Videodrome. Like if you think about the way how reality and the hallucinations are just totally fluid and you're never quite sure which one you're in, and people don't really necessarily, there's not a big moment where someone goes, oh my god, is this reality, or is, it's like it's a bit more fluid. And I mean that's the kind of films that Christopher Nolan makes now, but on a much bigger budget, like an Inception,
Right.
Tenet.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I think Christopher Nolan probably had a lot of influence from Cronenberg. I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, no, he's definitely, and just more broadly, Cronenberg clearly has influenced the larger filmmaking, landscape. There's no
Right. Sure.
doubt about that. But this particular, I don't know. It's quite difficult for me to. There was definitely a difference from me watching it now and watching it back in the day. It's come at a different point where, it has crossed over into some of the trappings being slightly dated, let's put it that way. And also some of the things, speaking about how the filmmaking techniques have changed. Like, obviously, Cronenberg's deliberately, he's no fool. He's deliberately taking conventions of genre and using them. But some of it now, I think so for instance, whenever something's about to happen, like, James Woods suddenly has slit in his stomach, so you get that weird effect where people's hair blows back.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And that seemed more comical to me now than it had ever had. For some reason, that never bothered me before, but this time that seemed like funnier. I think it's because the world has caught up, and now other people are doing these same things, but they're doing them in a slightly subtle way.
Parodic way.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's very difficult for me to be. I guess it's probably still a very relevant film, and I think people should see it. But I don't know. It's so it's so not just of its time. It's of my time. It's of my development. It's such a part of. So I never need to see this film again, in a way. Do you know what I mean? I can just replay it in my head, in a way. I don't have to sit down and watch it. And not that it was a chore way, it was interesting to watch again, but I seem to, I don't know if I may have sucked all the nutrients out of it. So it's for me, it's a bit of, it's like a grape skin or something, that I've sucked all the nutrients out of.
Okay.
So I'm very keen to see because this is the first time viewing for you. But also it's not quite the same as, like, if I was going to ask a younger person, that would be a different thing again. But even though you haven't seen the film necessarily before, you still remember this time to a certain extent.
It's time, of course, I remember, like.
What's your take on Videodrome coming to it fresh?
Well, I think I agree with everything you said, except I didn't have that previous thing to draw off of, right? I mean, I remember the time, but I didn't have those memories to go off of, right? So I mean, things like the hair blowing back you mentioned, that did strike me as a little bit comical, but not because it didn't stand out to me, because for you it was like before it wasn't comical and now it is.
Right.
For me, it just sort of like, it just felt kind of like a comical moment that I'm taking from my modern kind of eyes versus comparing two sets of eyes from two different time periods, right? So so I didn't even think about that it was sort of maybe not meant to be funny, or not meant to be sort of like a notable point. I don't know how to put that, but
I don't know if it is a notable point, really. It was just one thing that just for some reason this time it just jumped out. Oh, that's funny, and I never thought that was funny before. I just went with it in the past,
right?
And this time it stuck out for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Of course, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. Again, but you have to kind of watch it understanding that period, I think, right? So I'd love to show this to my kids someday and
Mm.
see what they say about it, or like a Gen X, not Gen X, like a Gen Z person would think of it. Um, Not having the experience of cassette tapes and Betamax, and I mean I remember I had a Betamax when I was a kid, so like what they don't even know what they are these days, right? Right, so like it was that tape. So
Well, I think what's tricky about it as well, if you were going to ask, because the problem is as well, but there's also the novelty value which clouds it as well. So there's even the possibility that this might even play better with a really, like, imagine like a 15-year-old now who's getting into horror and is specifically into horror, right? And
right,
they might even potentially like it even more because it's got that novelty value. And oh,
right,
cool, it's
sure,
the conspiracy is being disseminated by Betamax. Wow, it's like, so that might even they might even like it even more possibly. And
possible, yeah.
the dated element might actually give it more credence. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I can't comment on that, but yeah, it's quite possible. But yeah, I'm glad I finally watched this movie, and it was worth. It was a good viewing. It was made you think, but it made me wish for an updated version. So we'll see if
okay.
maybe someone will do it someday.
If you're a young person and you're watching VIDEDOROME, number one, why the fuck are you watching a bunch of old gits? But number two, thank you, and let us know how you get on as if you're like, I don't know, under 25 and you're watching VIDEODROME for the first time. I kind of would be quite curious to know what your, don't look it up, don't see what other people say about it on the internet, just watch it yourself, called your own personal reaction. I would be very interested, and I'm actually going to be amazed if we have any response. We won't, but I'm
Yeah, I don't
amazed
think
if
so.
we get any response. You got to try it, right? You got to try
Yeah,
it.
sure. Why not? Put it out there.
Yeah.
Put it out in the universe. All
Um,
right.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't have much else to say, but I'm glad I saw it, and it definitely hit its mark, I thought, at the time. I don't know what you would think of this without having experienced that time period, though. So
Yeah, it's an odd one as well. Me as well. It's almost, it's speaks for itself so much. I thought I would have quite a lot to say about it, but actually I don't. And I'm wondering if that's, again, that's if I would have had more to say about it in the past and less now. But it just, I don't know. It very much is what it is. And yeah, I don't know. You kind of have to watch it, but I feel it may have slipped a little bit out of the conversation. It did seem slightly less of a,
yeah, I'm surprised this movie wasn't more. I mean, I've heard of this movie, but it's never been a movie that's been like high on a lot of people's lists that I've heard, or that it's never been like a you have to watch Videodrome. But I'm surprised because of the. I mean, the production values are quite high for what it is, and I'm surprised I've never had anyone really recommend it to me before.
I
So
think what it is, I think it was almost, it was such a massive cult film that pretty much everyone saw who was interested in horror and stuff. It almost like um you took it for granted.
and everyone already seen it,
Yeah,
right?
because
So
a lot of those lists, you see, they're often slightly tempered with that kind of, oh, you may not know, or you may not have seen this one, or you may not have
right.
heard of this one, right? But
Everyone just thinks you've seen it, right?
yeah,
Even
everyone
these days,
assumes,
though, you think that everyone would be like now if you're a horror film, now you got to go back and watch Videodrome, right? So it's, but
yeah, I think it still looms kind of large. It's such a iconic title, I suppose.
mm.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm surprised then that I had never seen it before, that I had never gone around to seeing it. So glad I did, though. So yeah, it was
Hmm.
a good watch. It was fun.
Okie dokie then. So we
Yeah.
shall move on, I guess. Yeah, oh, it's worth mentioning. Sorry, as you were asking me about context. Is the next film he makes, of course, is The Dead Zone,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is his big kind of crossover.
Into mainstream, right?
Yeah, and also a great film. I think that's the thing about The Dead Zone, is one of those few examples where someone crosses over really well and they don't feel as if they've compromised their vision, right? That they've
Mm.
actually made the film they want to make, but also delivered a. I mean, I haven't seen the Dead Zone for a long time, but yeah, I always remember thinking that you've seen the Dead Zone, right?
Yeah, well, back in the 80s, yeah, I have not recently, but I also read the book. I used to be a big Stephen King
Right,
fan. So,
right.
yeah,
And I always
so
remember it kind of pleased everyone, right? People who read the
mm.
book liked it, and people who didn't read the book liked it, and Cronenberg fans liked it, people who weren't Cronenberg fans. It was just one of those films that was like, yep, Dead Zone.
But it was
Everyone,
also his
Dead Zone.
basically his first movie that he directed without writing it, right?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder how that happened. And then after that was The Fly, which again was a remake, right? So of something else. And
Yeah, but
um,
that's very much a Cronenberg film. He did write that. Yeah, Dead Zone is his, I suppose, his director for hire work, isn't it? I suppose
right.
you would
Yeah,
call
yeah.
it. Um, yeah, no, but I remember that being great as well. So again, another one I'd be happy to revisit it at some point. If you remember, Christopher Walken used to do parodies of it on SNL, right?
Of what?
Of the Dead Zone. He would play his character, but it would be
Oh,
like really small things like your son, you know, you've just polished the floor, but he's gonna step on it or something like that. It was like
yeah, yeah.
he'd have visions of very I
Oh,
didn't
I don't remember
yeah,
that, but yeah, sounds all right. Yeah.
yeah. Right, okay. Putting Videodrome to bed then. Taping over it with
Oh,
uh the lady in the car with glasses and a gun. There's a descriptive title for you.
yeah. It's a great title.
La dame dans l'auto avec des lunettes et un fusil is almost certainly how you don't pronounce it in French.
That's pretty terrible French pronunciation.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Here all week. Tip your waitress. This is a 1970 French-US co-production based on the book by, here we go again, Sébastien. Actually, I don't mind mangling this because it's not his real name. Sébastien Japrisot or Japrisot. It's an anagram of his real name. That's all I know. It's not his real name. But
Right. Probably Jeffrey Soul.
Japrisot, maybe.
Probably. My guess. Yeah.
Yeah, so a kind of a pretty well-known, revered writer of kind of crimes and mysteries and stuff in France, but not that well known in the English-speaking world, even though some of his books have been translated, including this one. The book is also called The Lady in the Car with the Glasses and the Gun. Good book. Been adapted more times than you might think as well. There's like, there's this one. There's the 2015. You didn't have time to watch the 2015, right?
No.
And also,
Did you watch it?
I did, yeah. I'll mention that. I have a little bit to say later on. There was also a 1976 Japanese TV miniseries based on it, which was a surprise. A 1992 Estonian film, and a 2002 another miniseries from Russia. So it's been adapted quite a few times. I wasn't aware of that. I was only aware of this one and the remake. The others were hard to find as well. I couldn't find copies of them. But yes, so my connection is Samantha Eggar and Oliver Reed of The Brood together again, or for the first time, right? This came out 9 years before The Brood. And this, as per the novel, is set in France. France, where pretty much everyone speaks French. Sorry, English. French wouldn't be that surprising.
Right.
And we should mention as well that I think what we watched, I wasn't aware of this when I sent it to you. I think, I don't think there's a good quality version of the English dub of this film. I don't think there ever was a subtitled one. I think it.
So are Samantha Eggar and Oliver Reed speaking French?
No, I think they're speaking English.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is being dubbed then?
Well, I think when it was originally made, they would have shot it, everyone just speaking their own language,
Okay.
Taigen style, right? And then Oliver Reed and Samantha Eggar would have posted up their own, or no, they would have spoken it on set. And then when it was sent out into the world, you would have had a French version, you would have an Italian version, an English version, as they did in those days. And I think if you get I think the English version only exists in like a shitty VHS rip, I think, which I think I might have floating about somewhere on one of my hard drives. So, but there's a nice looking French print. So I think what someone did is what they went and they synced up the audio from the English and they overlaid it on top of the French. I think this is a DVD. But the French version ran just a little bit longer. For whatever reason, this sometimes happened in different territories. You'd have a slightly different edit. And it's weird because it's just bits here and there, right? And it'll flip to the French. So whoever synced it up had synced it up properly, but then there's some bits there's just no English, so
no English for it, so they just left it there.
Yeah. So that's what's going on. Luckily, it makes no difference to the story. There's no confusion. It's just people saying like, "What's that over there?" or
sure,
"Get some horse meat" or something like that, right? So Samantha Eggar is works for Oliver Reed at like a fashion company, right? And he suddenly asks her at the last minute, "Oh, I need some stuff typing up. I need these documents because I need these documents. I'm gonna go somewhere. So I need you to come. I'm gonna install you in my house overnight. So because I haven't got time to come back to the office, blah blah blah. Me and my missus and my little girl, we're off tomorrow. So you come over to the house and you can stay there and you've got a bed in your own bathroom and everything. And you type up these papers for me and I'll give you a nice little bonus and no need to tell anyone else about this. So it's a bit of a secret." And he's kind of putting pressure and rushes her out, and so she goes to the house. And then in the morning, the Oliver Reed and his wife, as played by Stefan Audran, they're off somewhere and he's got a big fuck off American car, right? A Ford Thunderbird. It is in the novel. I think it is in the film as well. I don't know cars. Did you notice this? They don't actually.
I don't know what
Yeah,
it's a big convertible.
Yeah, they don't mention it in the film. They don't say, but I think it is a Thunderbird.
It's a notable card, right? It's like it stands out
amongst all the little strings and things like that.
Right?
And they ask her, "Oh, we're going to drive to the airport, and then I want you to drive our car back home, right?" And she's a bit like, "Oh, I've never driven such a big car, blah blah blah." But they kind of insist that she do this for them, and basically, rather than just drive the car back, she decides to go off on a little jaunt. Right? She goes off on a little jaunt, and she's attacked in a service station toilet. Someone smashes her hand. And then almost immediately when she goes to seek help, all these different people are telling her like, "Oh, you came through here yesterday." Or a cop stops her and says, "Oh, how did you?" And she's like, "I haven't spoken to you before." And everyone's very confused because they assume she's someone else and she doesn't know what they're talking about. She also picks up a cheeky young hitchhiker, John McHenry he was in the Bartleby film the same year as this. He starred in that. And a role that Crispin Glover would later play, of course. And so he gets in the car with her and they start kind of a little bit of a romance. Spoilers, by the way. Spoilers all the way on this film. He ends up stealing the car. So she kind of has to track him down. And then when she finally tracks down the car, there's a dead body in the trunk that she doesn't recognize. And he claims it's not his. He doesn't know he didn't kill. And she's like, "Well, I didn't kill." So basically, the rest of the film is them trying to figure out where the fuck this dead body is going on. Why do people think they've seen her before, etc. And then finally, it's all kind of explained. So this is the thing. So I've read the novel. So I was wondering, before anything else, you haven't read the novel, right? I'm assuming.
No.
So just going by this film, did you actually understand what was going on? Because I've heard some people say that this film is confusing when it gets to the final.
It is pretty confusing. But it was pretty confusing. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I thought the overdub kind of narration by Oliver Reed at the end, where he explains step by step everything, basically explained it all to me, although it seemed quite thin and,
Unlikely.
and kind of big giant plot holes that you could drive that a big American car through.
Mm.
But yeah, that's neither here nor there. I think I basically got the idea, but I also kind of supplemented it by reading the Wikipedia synopsis. So I think I basically got the idea. Yeah, but it was kind of confusing, I'll be honest.
Okay, okay. This is the last film directed by Anatol Litvak, Ukrainian-born, who made a whole bunch of films in Hollywood. A film of his I like is Sorry, Wrong Number from 1948. That's a very good film noir thriller that I like. Jacques Brisson himself worked on the screenplay based on his book. Also, Richard Harris, and who wrote that odd film from the same year, I Start Counting, and Eleanor Perry, who wrote her director husband's Diary of a Mad Housewife the same year. They worked on the not the script, but they worked on the English language dialogue. So you've got some good people working, on the film. Score by Michel Legrand, and a very cheerful, upbeat theme tune by Petula Clark, which at first I thought, oh, that's good. I like how they're using that in a kind of juxtaposed way. But then after a while, I was just, or is it just badly used? I wasn't quite sure.
That was kind of bad.
Yeah,
that it seemed kind of inappropriate for the content. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and at first I thought, oh, but yeah, it is just inappropriate as opposed to a clever juxtaposition or somewhere between the two, right? And I suppose you could say, I mean, the one thing, I mean, it's very much nowadays it's a time capsule as well, right? So you enjoy looking at the late 60s fashions and designs and costumes and all of that. It all looks awfully chic and French, lovely,
right?
But yes, so as I said, I didn't have the confusion issue, but that was slightly just because I knew how it plays out in the book. And one thing I've noticed as well is it's kind of interesting. Sometimes something just fits a format. So this film actually plays out quite close to the book. The big reveal and everything is very close to the book. But somehow when you're reading the book, your suspension of disbelief works, and you're like, that's very clever. And by the time you finish the book, you think, oh, that was a fun, rollicking read and very clever and put together, good job. Whereas if you're watching it play out on screen, it's kind of less convincing.
Right, yeah. I would say it was, yeah.
Especially how anyone, because the thing is, people are, when they stop Samantha Eggar, like they're talking to a very close and she looks nothing like Stefan Adram.
Yeah, nothing. And I get that they put a wig on her, but at the same time, still doesn't really look like her. And and they try to explain it away where he's like, oh, well, people don't really pay much attention to you. They only see what they want to see. And I was like, all right, sure. I'll take it. I'll take that as your explanation.
Well, it works in the book.
At least they tried to explain it, right?
Yeah.
So,
but it works in the book. That's the thing. It works in the book. But on screen, you're constantly betrayed by actually seeing it, right?
Seeing it, yes. Because
how some things you can't really blame the film. The film follows the book quite closely, and maybe that's its problem. Actually, is that it does. It should either have made it more. So, for instance, in the 2015 remake, it's slightly more convincing. They chose two actresses that
looked alike.
When they don't look alike, but when they do that bit, the reveal, she does look kind of like her.
Oh, okay.
Here, you just think that just looks like Stefan Adram. It looks nothing like Samantha.
Yeah, it looks like someone in a wig. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I chose this film just because I was planning to watch this film anyway, and I wanted to read the book, and I thought, oh, perfect, Reed and Eggar, and yeah, it's a little disappointing. It wasn't. I thought this film would be a lot better because I've heard some people say this film's, pretty good and a bit of a kind of a lost gem and worth rediscovering, blah blah blah. And while it's not bad, it's not great, is it, Ron?
Yeah, I'd say that sums it up. Yeah, it was a little underwhelming. It was like, oh, a nice you know, I read the synopsis is like, oh, she keeps on this trip, and everyone kind of you know, recognizes her, but she can't figure out why. And it's like, oh, that's kind of an interesting idea, you know, and
Yeah.
it's good premise, and you know, and this sort of like you know, this sort of body appears. It's like, oh, it's, you know, interesting kind of mystery thriller. What's going on? But I thought the you know, yeah, definitely the plot holes were just a little bit too big to kind of suspend your disbelief. And as well, I thought the you know, as you said, the music kind of played against it. And yeah, and I don't know if it was just the music, but I thought generally there was a just a general lack of suspense, or kind of, you know, it was just sort of like a, I was just like a drama I was watching, right? It was like her going on a road trip, but it never really felt like, oh my goodness, like there was never like this sort of like edge of my seat suspense
Yes,
that you needed for this movie,
I
which
think
I
you're
just
right.
thought was, it was
Yeah.
just not there, right? So there was just no, it was just kind of blah. Yeah,
One of the
so
reasons,
yeah.
interestingly enough, so in terms of just how the plot plays out, it's pretty close to the book. But the one kind of major difference is, so in the book, the character that Samantha Eggar plays, Danny, is much more neurotic.
Mm.
Is much more neurotic, and of course, you're privy to her inner thoughts and stuff. So the fact that she's neurotic and worrying about anything, that in itself builds suspense, because she feels
Mm.
the whole world is in some conspiracy against her, whatever. But Samantha Eggar's character, in comparison, is quite happy-go-lucky almost. There's
Well, I mean, even this like when the guy he picks up this hitchhiker, he's kind of like a sleazeball, and she has sex with him within 2 hours anyway, and then he steals her car, and then she finds him later, and it's almost like she doesn't even care that he has stolen her car. It's like she like had like she was no like, oh yeah, I really, where are you? I want to see you. And he kind of comes out of like the shadows in this parking garage. I was like, wait, like the guy just like stole your car and left you like on the
yeah,
side of the road after like having sleeping with you. You don't like care about this. Like, why would you be very angry? Like, there's no, almost no, there was. I mean, make a choice. It was just there was no choice at all. It was just
right.
like, oh, there you are, right? It was just there was nothing, right? So
Yeah.
I was a
Again,
little
it
disappointed.
makes a lot more sense in the book
Yeah,
because she's neurotic and she's
right,
seeking validation, and
right,
she's
sure.
damaged in some way. So again, yeah, they didn't really bring that out at all. I'm wondering. I'm not a big fan of the narration in general, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if this might have been a film that would have benefited maybe from a little bit of a narration.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because then I think the Oliver Reed narration at the end was just so like it was basically like reading from a book. Basically, they just I was like they could have. I mean, if you're taking it and making it to a new medium, the
Yeah,
visual medium, they could have shown that a little more rather than just explain. You know, Oliver Reed just explain. You know, and I'm trying to imagine it, like it's showing all the things with his voiceover explaining what's happening, and I'm imagining her in the living room with him with his gun as he actually is telling her all this, right? Because like
right.
it was supposed to be him, and I was like, why would she just sit here and listen to like go this like 20-minute long story about like, and why would he even bother telling her all this stuff? It was like a Bond villain kind of nonsense. It was just it seemed so like, oh, now I'm going to tell you everything that happened step by step. But yeah, it didn't read for me. It was just sort of like it felt silly, you know. So it's
If it was a modern six-part Netflix series or something, I think this would be the final episode, right? And you'd
sure.
see everything, right? You'd see
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, and they
Yeah,
could lay it out a little bit more, and
yeah,
you know, letting the audience make their own conclusions, or understand it, you know, through a
yeah,
different way. But like just saying, then I went and I found you, and I hurt your
yeah.
hand because I was because her she hurt her hand, so now I had to make you hurt your hand. I was like, all right, fine, okay, I get it. But if you had just done that and showed her your hand and putting her up, oh, that's why he did that
Right.
because she needed, you know,
Or
it
you had it
didn't
in, yeah, you had it in
yeah,
like you had it
it
like
didn't
a
let the
maximum.
audience, yeah, it didn't it sort of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for, it sort of like didn't expect the audience to use their own brains, you know what I mean? It was sort of like, you know, they you know,
Right,
yeah, had low expectations of the audience being able to figure it out themselves, and it kind of too much spoon feeding to the point
right.
where it became, there was an element of confusion and then an element of just like too much explanation, you know.
I see
So
what you
it's
mean. Yeah, or they
yeah,
could have
yeah, so
gone the one cut of the dead route where they showed the one half from her point of view, and then they showed him.
sure, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, that would work too. That'd be an interesting take on it. Yeah, so
So the
yeah.
2015 version, I had a look at, and one thing you'd appreciate about it, I think, Ron, you're fond of hot Scottish redheads. So it stars Freya Mavor.
Okay.
I think you'll appreciate that. That's all I'm going to say about that. But otherwise, I mean, in a way, they fixed it up in a way. The character in that is neurotic, like the one in the novel, and there was more a kind of detail. However, at the end of the day, it ended up kind of being the same level of which the book doesn't, I have to say, even though, like I said, the book plays out pretty much the same way. If you read the book, maybe not now after you've seen the film, so I'd wait a few years until you've forgotten it all. But
yeah.
The book is a lot of fun. There's a reason people like Sebastian Jacques Rousseau, right?
Right.
And the book is really, really good. But yeah, this and again, it's difficult to fault it either version, because they do, especially the second one, the 2015 one, they do a good job of following the book. But I guess it's maybe something that, considering it's been adapted this many times, it's surprising, but it's maybe something that just doesn't belong on screen. Maybe it is something that just
it's meant to be it's better as a novel than it is a film. Yeah, I think so.
So I certainly wouldn't encourage anyone. It's not like someone else have a go. Like, unless you've got a really good idea that I can't think of, I think this should just stay a book.
Yeah, for once. Yeah.
So yeah, encourage people to read the fucking book.
Read the book. Yeah, maybe someday I'll get around to it.
Maybe I'll remake it. Actually, I'll say "Lady in the Glasses," and then cuts to just on-screen message. Read the fucking book for 90 minutes, and
or
then
just the book turning pages. You know, like
or just me sat there reading it.
You holding the book. Hey, look, here it is.
Yeah. Available as a very reasonable Kindle as well.
Sure, there you go.
Less $5 or something. So you have no.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. There we go then. Right, and I suppose we're reacting to this next time.
Right.
Yeah. So until then, long live the new Flash.
Long live the new Flash.